The laughter hit her before the door even finished swinging shut, a low, rolling sound that crawled across the wooden floor like smoke. It wasn't cruel at first, just curious, amused, careless. But when the teenage girl took 3 more steps into the sunlit biker bar, shoulders squared, wearing a jacket far too heavy for someone her age, the laughter sharpened into something that cut. They saw the hoodie sleeves peeking out, the slim frame, the ponytail, and they decided who she was in a heartbeat. What none of them noticed, at least not yet, was the patch stitched across her back, quietly waiting to change everything. If you believe stories like this matter, stories about kindness, second chances, and quiet strength, take a moment right now to like this video, comment your thoughts, share it with someone who needs hope, and subscribe to the channel and stories. Your support keeps these stories alive. Her name was Mara Collins, and she had almost turned around the moment the laughter started. The instinct was sharp and familiar, like touching a hot stove. She had felt it in school hallways, at bus stops, even in grocery lines when people looked too long at her worn shoes or her too old backpack. But today was different. Today, the light coming through the front windows was warm and steady, and it reminded her why she was there. The bar was busy even though it was barely past noon, sunlight catching dust in the air and glinting off rows of parked motorcycles outside. Engines ticked softly as they cooled, and the smell of fuel mixed with coffee and fried food. This place had always been loud, always intimidating, even when she used to wait outside years ago, tracing shapes in the dirt. The jacket felt heavier with every step. It was black leather, cracked in places, softened in others, carrying the weight of decades. The words Iron Wolves curved across the back in thick white stitching, and beneath it, an eagle spread its wings. At the bottom, stitched with the same careful thread, were the words Founding Member, and a small square patch that read 1971. Mara had cleaned it the night before, running her fingers over every stitch, remembering how those same fingers had once been held by someone much bigger, much stronger, guiding her as she learned to walk. Wearing it felt like standing inside a memory. The bikers were scattered around the room, sitting in clusters, mugs and glasses in their hands, vests covered in patches earned over lifetimes. Most of them were middle-aged or older, faces weathered by sun and miles of road. A few grinned openly now, nudging each other, eyebrows raised. A girl her age didn't belong here. A girl in a hoodie under a biker jacket definitely didn't. Mara felt her ears burn, but she kept walking, each step an act of stubborn courage. She told herself she wasn't here for them. She was here because she had promised herself she wouldn't be afraid anymore. Her life had narrowed after the funeral. The house felt too quiet, the walls echoing with the absence of a man who had filled every room with laughter and stories. Her grandfather, Owen Collins, had been everything to her since she was little. He taught her how to ride a bike, how to fix a loose screw, how to stand her ground when the world tried to push her over. When he passed, the Iron Wolves had filled the church with leather and silence, standing shoulder to shoulder like a wall. Mara remembered clutching that jacket then, the smell of oil and leather wrapping around her like a shield. That was when she decided she would bring it back here, where it belonged. She stopped near the center of the room, sunlight outlining her figure, and for a moment she simply stood there. The laughter ebbed into murmurs. A few of the men leaned back, squinting, something shifting in their expressions as their eyes finally settled on the back of her jacket. One man froze mid-sip, his glass hovering inches from his mouth. Another straightened slowly, as if pulled by an invisible string. The patch wasn't flashy, but to them, it spoke louder than any roar of an engine. Founding Member, 1971. That wasn't just history, it was sacred ground. Mara felt the change before she saw it. The air seemed to still, the earlier noise dissolving into a quiet that pressed against her ears. She swallowed, her hands trembling slightly at her sides. She hadn't planned a speech. She hadn't planned anything beyond walking in and walking back out. But standing there, she realized how much she had carried with her into that room: grief, fear, and a fierce need to be seen as more than a joke. The bikers began to really look at her then. Not just at the jacket, but at the way she stood, chin lifted despite her nerves. Someone recognized the stitching pattern, the way the eagle's wing was repaired with a darker thread. That had been Owen's doing after a long ride through rain and gravel decades ago. Another man remembered the patch placement, how only the original members wore it there. Memories flickered across their faces, softening lines that had been carved deep by years on the road. Mara's journey hadn't been easy. After her grandfather's death, money had been tight, and she worked after school to help her mother keep the lights on. She learned quickly how to balance homework with late shifts and how to swallow her pride when customers looked through her instead of at her. The jacket had hung in her closet like a promise she wasn't sure she deserved to keep. Wearing it today felt like stepping into shoes that were too big, but she also knew that Owen had never believed in shrinking to fit expectations. A man near the back pushed his chair away from the table and stood. He was tall, his beard streaked with gray, eyes sharp but now filled with something like recognition. Others followed, one by one, until most of the room was on its feet. No one laughed anymore. The respect in the air was heavy, undeniable. Mara's heart hammered, unsure if she had done something wrong or if she was about to be asked to leave. Instead, she felt something else entirely, space being made for her. The sun shifted as clouds passed outside, casting moving patterns across the floor. The room, once so intimidating, now felt like it was breathing with her. She realized that this place wasn't just a bar. It was a living archive of loyalty and loss, of people who had buried friends and ridden on anyway. And in that moment, Mara understood that she was part of that story, whether she felt ready or not. Her struggles hadn't magically vanished. She was still a teenager with exams looming, bills waiting at home, and grief that woke her at night. But something inside her loosened as she stood there, the jacket warming against her back. The laughter that had greeted her now felt like a distant echo, powerless and small. The bikers didn't see a girl pretending to be something she wasn't anymore. They saw a legacy continuing, quietly but firmly. As she turned to leave, sunlight followed her, spilling through the open door and lighting the dust in the air. A few of the men nodded as she passed, their expressions gentle, almost protective. Outside, the motorcycles gleamed under the clear daytime sky, chrome reflecting blue and gold. Mara paused, breathing deeply, letting the moment settle. She hadn't come to prove anything, but she was leaving with something priceless, validation that her grandfather's world hadn't disappeared with him. Near the end of the day, as the sun dipped slightly but still held its warmth, Mara sat on the curb, the jacket folded carefully. Beside her, she thought about how laughter could turn into silence, and how silence could turn into respect, all because of a story stitched into leather. She knew there would be other rooms, other moments where people underestimated her. But she also knew now that courage didn't always roar. Sometimes it just walked forward and let the truth reveal itself. If this story stirred something in you, if it reminded you of someone you've lost or a moment when you found your strength, please take a second to like this video, share it, and leave a comment. Your engagement tells us these stories matter. Before the very end, we have a special request for you. Comment the word respect if you believe kindness and legacy can still change hearts. Mara stood up as the afternoon light stretched long shadows across the pavement. She slipped the jacket back on, feeling its familiar weight settle around her shoulders. This time, it didn't feel too heavy. It felt exactly right.